I recently showed you how I built a fully functioning, multi-use miter saw and workbench station. Two of my most used tools can be easily flipped up into use. I prepped them to have integrated dust collection for my soon-to-be-built dust collection system. Let me show you how I built the hidden connections from the tools to the ducting so I can do stuff like this. On the bottom of the platforms that hold the tools are holes that will line up with the dust collection holes on the workbench. The scroll saw hole is directly below the blade to catch all the dust particles that fall down. The sander has a dust port, so the hole in the flip top is a short PVC turn. I started with the scroll saw flipped up on the table and marked the outline of the hole. With the tool flipped out of the way, I used a straight edge to make a slightly larger box and cut it out with a jigsaw. The reason for the slightly larger box is so that small wood chips don't get stuck on a ledge. The front of the hole lines up with the 2x4 framing below it. Next, I brought up a 6-inch ceiling duct flange and figured out its location. It has to sit off the wall a bit because of the 2x4 framing below the worktop. I marked both the inside and outside and cut out the inside with a jigsaw. This flange has an adhesive foam pad that helps seal the edge. It just helps to remove the paper so the sticky part is used. The screws also help hold it in place. The sander also needs a worktop hole that lines up with its dust collection. It was a little tricky to line up the pipe because it's got a plywood base around it, but I managed and cut it out. There will be channels just under the worktop that lead from these holes to the ducting outlet. First, I used a handful of pencils to line up an ideal layout, then cut some 2x4s to size. The inside corner is just about 90 degrees, so these two pieces could be screwed together. When the tools aren't in use, plywood plugs will sit in the space to make the workbench flat. I glued popsicle sticks under the inside edges. These sticks will hold the plugs flush with the rest of the top. The 2x4s are the sides of this dust channel. They are glued to the underside with brad nails holding them in place while the glue cures. I let that sit overnight before moving on to the next step, which is to close off the back wall of the channel around the ducting outlet. I cut several small blocks of plywood that have the same 3.5-inch height as the 2x4s. Several of these around the back make a gradual curve so the airflow is more direct up into the tube. These are glued with wood glue and a dab of hot glue so they don't fall off while the wood glue cures. Now at this curve, I want to add an angled piece that eliminates the back corner at the bottom. This will hopefully act as more of a curve and guide the air better up into the ducting. It's just a piece of 1/4-inch plywood that I had to test fit and recut a few times until I was happy with it. The back and bottom edges are sanded to eliminate any lips that could deflect the air. The inside edge of the worktop was also rounded over with a Dremel to hopefully slightly improve the airflow. All of the inside seams were caulked to prevent any unwanted leaks in this part of the system. We want as much airflow through those two openings as possible. Lastly, I used leftover 1/2-inch plywood to piece together a base and seal in the channel. All the pieces are glued and nailed except for this one right here. This is screwed, so in the event that something gets stuck or falls into the channel, I can remove this piece and fish it out. Let's skip ahead for a second to after all the ducting is installed. I made the plugs for the two holes that are now open in the worktop. So while making the plugs, it was cool to actually use the dust collection system to keep the area clean. For both plugs, I used a Forstner bit to bore holes angled inwards. That way, There's an inside lip to pinch and pull out the plug. The plywood for the plugs is from the same sheet as the worktop, so the surface is nice and flush. And just like that, this worktop now has uniquely integrated dust collection for these two tools. These can very easily create a lot of dust, so having dedicated dust collection for them will make my workflow so much better. And this has the added benefit of acting as an easy way to clean the work surface. All I have to do is brush any dust near the openings and the system does the rest. Unique solutions to problems are always so cool when they work out. Okay, that's it for now. See ya.
Here you go.